Okay, welcome back to What If History Restarted. It's episode 45. Last time we saw some stuff happen, so watch that. Anyway, we're going to start with an exploration, including all of this area finally being discovered. I'm a little bit sick right now, but oh well. So yeah. This area is completely filled in now, and we just have like the far north and the far south undiscovered. But even those will be less undiscovered. So you see that all of mainland Canada is now explored, as well as a decent amount of these islands. So it will look something like this. Bam. And of course the lakes as well. I think there's... Yep. Now recently we saw that these countries broke away from Catalonia, so they're going to be doing things now. So we see that this country over here is going to expand up into Ontario. And look something like, well, some of this land is going to go over to the greenish one, so these guys are going to look something like this, which looks pretty bad, but oh well. These guys take this, whoa, and the Danish are going to continue to colonize, that. Now they are cut off, annoyingly, by this country, so they don't really like that. They're going to go to war with this country because they want to keep expanding up here. So the Danish keep pushing in, and their hope is to fully colonize this area for themselves, which would be pretty great. And they don't expect this war to be too difficult, so they start pushing in. But these guys actually have a pretty good general, and he is able to kick back a lot of this aggression. He does not push into the colony, though. To the Danish colony, I mean. They still maintain control over the Hudson Bay. Or I think this is the Hudson Bay. But so over in actual Denmark, they're now realizing that this war is a little bit harder than they thought. They send over some more troops, and now they really start going through. They meet up at this lake. Well, here we can just bam. And yeah, that's not great. But we see that something interesting happens in that we have this country right up here is actually going to come to the aid of the purple country. Push in like this. These guys do the same. They start making a naval sort of, I guess this is a naval, even though it's across lakes. But yeah, they start going in like this. So now the Danish were not expecting this, and they redirect a lot of their troops, but still keep a lot up here. Basically, they push all these countries out, but they say now, hey, if you just give us this, we'll stop. And these guys are going to agree to that. So you have the new border being like this, but we did see that European power did just kind of get humiliated by some colonies that broke off, which is not ideal for reputation. Anyway, Denmark is not going to waste this though, and they are going to expand a whole lot up here in Canada, not that much. And yeah, take over a lot of this northern area. And in the end, oh no, sure. In the end, they're going to look something like this, which is pretty good. Some little pixels. Anyway, over in South America, Tuscany continues to do their weird thing out here. And this actually goes pretty well for them. They take up a lot of land. They look very interesting now. And over here, this I think the Amazon rainforest looks something like this. So, like, this is just, like, rainforest right here, and no one really wants it. So, whoa. I just died. But yeah, Tuscany owns... You know what, hold on. So yeah, Tuscany owns a lot of this southern land, but they don't really want to go up north anymore, because that's just dense rainforest, and all the explorers are dying. So that's not fun. It also creates this horrible border war, but that's whatever. We're going to turn quickly over to the Old World to do the Holy Omani Empire, which is very quickly coming together. Basically, all these countries, well, yeah, like all four of these other countries decide just to jump this one, because it's kind of hogging control over this African colony. I don't really know if that counts as a colony, but yeah. So all of these guys start pushing in just to destroy their monopoly, and it goes pretty well. And now to ensure that nobody else can like take control over it the way they did, they're going to take some repercussion. I don't know what the right word would be, but yeah, some safety measures basically. Let's also make that a regular city because I thought it would be vital. So yeah, just to ensure that it does not, that one person, well, one country can't take control over this area, they kind of make this weird diagonal thing. Yeah. Anyway, we now see that there's only 4 Omani countries. There's the gold one in the east, or the west. There's the gray one in the north, the brown one in the south, and the blue one in the east. And now there's going to be less because we see that the blue country and the gray country are kind of having bad relations, and so they're going to go to war. And this goes pretty well for the blue team at first. However, the brown team is going to come to the aid of the gray team. And then we see that the yellow team is going to come to the aid of the blue team. So yeah, we now have this 2v2 big war here. These guys immediately start doing this. Yeah, it's not too great. Up here, this brown one, or this gray one, capitulates, but that took a lot of troops. So the brown one was able to push these guys out and, like, basically just redirect. I don't know what's going on up there, but yeah, redirect their troops to go over here and wreak havoc on the gold country, to the point where they also capitulate. So obviously their control kind of goes over to the blue country. And then there were 2. We just have the brown one and the blue one to see who will take control. Cities, yes. Bam. I don't know why this wasn't their capital. That would make a lot more sense. And you know what, we'll make that one a vital city. That is way too big of a thing. Oh, well, maybe not. And yeah, there it is. So their Holy Omani Empire is almost fully under one government. Well, I mean, there is still like there's always been like one big government, but there's like all the little governments that still have a lot of authority and all that. Also, this blue one looks too close to the color of the ocean, so we're gonna adjust that slightly, and that is much better. And then we're gonna do the same thing for the British Isles. Over here in Wales, we see that Ireland goes on like a conquest, and they take a good amount of this territory, establishing this like Welsh colony. Scottish countries are still very peaceful, and this one is continuing to be war hungry and take over all of this land. Here, this green one gets coalitioned. Well, yeah, this green one gets coalitioned and completely divided up. Let's just fix this a little bit. Sure. And yeah, that's Britain, which is also starting to come together now. And that is our little break in the old world over for now, as we turn back over to the new world, where Korea has also been colonizing a whole lot. Them and Denmark are kind of like in a race right now to see who can be the biggest country, and it's definitely Korea winning. Because, like, let's see, Denmark is 327,000 pixels, Korea is 700,000 pixels, so nearly twice as big. So, yeah, bam versus bam. I guess, so yeah, Korea barely has any coast on the Atlantic Ocean. It's just like this over here, and then this over here. But most of it actually, Denmark has way more control over the Atlantic. Probably the most control over the Atlantic, really. Now we're going to see a big old expedition into Antarctica, and the entire thing is going to get discovered. So, like this. And that's pretty good. Now, obviously, these countries are kind of unsure what to do with Antarctica, because nobody really wants it. It's literally just like a wasteland, to them at least. It has no real purpose. Like, man, just look at that, it's terrible. But, yeah, Antarctica really just has, like, no main purpose to anyone. So they create kind of a similar agreement to our world, to just, like, leave it alone, and not actually take control over it. Tuscany takes control over these islands. But, yeah, these guys, the countries of the world, do not bother with Antarctica. Anyway, we're going to turn over to here, back to the Americas, I guess, where once again we're going to see another sort of rebellion occurring. So kind of inspired by this, people have kind of seen that, like, the colonies can, like, actually beat the colonizers if they really tried and worked together. So we're going to come over to, let's do, how about Tuscany, their colony up here. So these guys don't really like being under Tuscany's control. Tuscany is giving most of their resources to their African and South American colonies, and kind of neglecting that one, even though it's like has the highest population. It just isn't really as valuable as these other places. We'll show that by giving some more major cities. Maybe even sprinkle in a vital city right here. So, and how about one, like right there. So these guys are pretty unhappy with that. They're kind of just being neglected by their government. So we see mass rebellions over here. And basically, it's very difficult to kind of just show the full extent of this, because we just have like a bajillion different factions rise up, and the factions are fighting each other, but they all have their own goals and stuff, so it's very complicated. But just to make things easier, we're just going to show them under one color. Maybe not that, because that's pretty similar to Korea. So, yeah. But these rebellions go pretty well. These three over by Florida connect. People down here in Florida, under the control of Austria, are actually just kind of chill. They don't really care. But we see that it's not really going to matter to these guys, because they're going to decide to liberate them anyway, even though they don't really want to be. But they don't really mind being liberated either. So rest in peace to Austria's only colony. Over these like hillbilly people take over all of this, and now we're just left with this more populated like Alabama area, which is kind of like more, it's kind of like more loyal to the government. So we see that resistance here is a little bit harder. Eventually these guys do win. And now we get to see this peace treaty, which will look something like this. And yeah, so some of the factions got united. It was definitely a lot more than 5. Well, really 4, because these guys are like, got liberated. And if you're wondering, obviously this is kind of like increased tensions between Austria and Tuscany, because Austria's saying like, hey, your people just invaded my colony. Tuscany's like, well, we weren't controlling those people. They were literally rebelling against us. So that does kind of make more sense. So obviously, like, Austria's not going to actually go to war with them over that, but like it definitely doesn't help things. And yeah. But we have these 5 countries. We have like Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Jim, and Carolina. And they all exist. This border looks really bad. We could just unite them, but like, how about instead they just go to war? So yeah, these guys are immediately going to go to war because these guys are former Catalonian colony. These guys are former Tuscan colony. And so that kind of like creates some weird rivalry tension, which doesn't really make sense because they both rebelled against those countries. So like, I don't know, man, it's stupid. It's a very stupid war, but they do go to war. This country is the first one to do it, and even though this pink team is way more powerful, these guys do surprisingly well. They go up here by like Chesapeake Bay, but once this guy really starts focusing in, they do a lot better. But then we just kind of see like, you might actually see like trench warfare over here. This whole front line just becomes like a mess. There's a ton of weird pockets of troops all over the place. You might even see like some exclaves of troops. It's like, yeah. And the entire thing, it's just terrible. So these guys eventually agree to peace. And they agree on a new border. If we look at the relation layer, you can see that their relations are pretty well, but like suited right now, but oh well. Besides, it's probably changing a little bit by now. See, this is what we see the new border look like. And that looks much better. Weird little thing kind of looks bad as well, so they're just going to sell it over to Alabama. So with that, we see that North America is starting to get very decolonized, which is good for them. The colonists, but not the colonizers, who are all very terrified right now. So far, it has only been in North America. Well, unless you count Central America as being different, because then it would be North America and Central America. But mainly, big point here is that it has not happened at all in South America. So that's a little bit reassuring for these guys. But South America is much less populated in this timeline. And I would assume ours as well. Also going to give this to Korea because that would look sick. Yeah. And what else is going to happen? Well, for one, we see the world is going to be fully discovered now, as we have all of this be explored. And with that, there we go. Then I can argue that this being the multiple of 5 episode that ends off this like session of episodes is actually relevant because it was the episode where the world got filled in terms of exploration. And so, yeah, that's pretty good for them. We will turn our attention back to the blue team's little Reconquista over here. By this point, they're kind of just like, these guys are kind of just like done with them doing this, and really they don't really have any excuse to like take off one specifically, so they kind of just have to go in for a big war now. You know, tensions are high, so they just gotta do it. And the blue team is going to decide that, like, if it's inevitable, they might as well be the one to start it, because then they'll have like a little head start advantage. So that goes pretty well. This country is really similar to their invasion colors, so let's just, oh no. Sure, that will work. And then we see, and also we're just gonna use this country's invasion color. These guys start pushing it pretty well. And take this major city. Hold on. And yeah, so we see that now these countries are starting to push the blue team back. Oh. And now that is pretty scary for them because they're getting flashbacks to when they got obliterated before. But they are going to start pushing these countries back after a pretty big wave of like nationalism. They have a new strategy now to focus on one at a time. So they start pouring down into this gray one over here. Although this now allows this pink one to kind of do pretty good against them. Oops. And yeah, so these guys can start pushing in like this. But in the end, the blue team does finally capture this entire gray one. And then they sue for peace. So, in the end, okay, I made that country back to normal, but I guess that's fine. So, in the end, the blue team will be fully destroying this country. They will also, hopefully annexing it. I mean, they also changed their capital to its capital. And now this will be a major city. So, yep, that's good for them. But it is not all good for them. Because we see that this Azerbaijan country is going to take this. And this red one is actually going to make it away with a whole lot of land. Of looking like this. So, yeah. Kind of a loss, kind of a victory. Yeah. Anyway, that is the blue team now. And I think now it is finally time to do power rankings again. So, first is, probably to no one's surprise, Korea. They have become gigantic and have some of the most they have a monopoly over the Pacific Ocean, and they can go all the way, like, across this. They basically just, like, control the entire globe. Anyway, 2 is Tuscany. 3 is actually kind of surprisingly Austria. Now, Tuscany is more obvious. They've been a very powerful country for most of history. They have a really big colony here. They have a really big one in South America. They have, like, the most advanced technology in the world. They have, like, probably the strongest economy, maybe other than Korea. So, yeah, they're pretty good. But now, Austria is a little bit more surprising, because they didn't have any colonies. However, obviously, making colonies takes a whole lot of resources, and there's always the risk of them rebelling and forming their own thing, which we can see has happened to plenty of countries. Meanwhile, Austria has just been kind of like up here, focusing in their own country, developing their technology, military, and all that. Other than that, they probably are the European country with the most manpower, so that's pretty good for them. Now, fourth is going to be Mesopotamia. They're pretty good right now. 6th is probably going to be Denmark. 7th is Catalonia. 8th is China. Now, 9th, we're going to give over to Golden Horde. 10th, I'm going to go with Holy Omani Empire. We're going to continue a little bit. 11 is China. 12 we'll give over to, like, probably a European country, but like, well, I don't really know. Maybe Ukraine, actually. Yeah. 13 is Egypt. 14 is probably going to be Bengal. 15 going to be Galatia. This well, I guess more than Portugal at this point. Portugal. 16 is Belgium. 17 is who is 17th? You know what? I'm actually going to say it's this country over here. Called Yucatan. Yucatan. I don't know if that's how you spell it. So, an American country is actually 17th in the world, which is pretty good. 18 is Sparta. 19 is, we'll say is it this country? It might just be. 19 is Bulgaria. And 20th, final one, is this country. I guess we'll call them Slovakia. And there we go. There's our top 20 power rankings for this. So, Korea, Tuscany. Well, Korea's like in their own league. And they have like Tuscany and Austria, Mesopotamia in the next. And then like all of these guys in the next league. I'll throw in Egypt in there too, actually. Yeah. And then the rest are kind of just like their own thing. So yeah. It's like where all the major gaps are. Boom. Boom. Maybe I'll put it over like right here. And then that. Actually, maybe I should put it right here. So yeah, those are the big gaps. And with that, we might actually be done for this episode. I don't really think there's much else to cover. Yeah, I mean, like, Cyprus reforms the Cypriot Empire real quick. But no, that does not happen. But you know what, we can actually talk about Cyprus, I guess. Cyprus is still just existing. Because remember, all the way, they have like this thousands of years old wall, which they are still maintaining and actually building upon. And by this point is like impenetrable. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we've like had like Tuscany try to come down here. Well, trying like, because Tuscany and the Cypriot Empire had some very tense relations. So I wouldn't even be surprised if like Tuscany, or maybe even like Mesopotamia, because they're literally like right here. Maybe Egypt. Like, all these countries have at some point tried to attack it. This wall is like impenetrable. They've only done like minor damages. They got repaired within months, and they lost like a ton of troops trying to do it. They did actually see Cypriots because there was like people on top of the wall shooting at them. But yeah, so no one really knows what's going on in Cyprus, but it does exist. This country's kind of similar in color to it. I just realized. Wow. Honestly, this country is probably 21st most powerful, and the blue team is 22nd. Okay, but that's actually it for power rankings. Except this country over here is 23rd. And yeah, and then actually no, this one's probably 23rd, and this one's 24th, and this one's 24th, and this one's 25th. But yeah, that is the end. Adios.